Unedited vintage photos. Viewers' discretion advised. Cigarettes bought from a hospital bed in the 1950s. These days, cigarettes come with a warning from the Surgeon General. However, back in the 50s, medical experts had a lenient view on cigarette usage. Doctors at the time believed puffing away could soothe the worried person, suppress appetite, and generally do the patient a world of good. This photo from the 1950s shows one nurse giving cigarettes to an admitted patient, while another nurse looks on in approval. Arrest in the jungle. The Vietnam War was tough on all the parties involved. Officially, the war was fought between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, but there were other parties in the conflict. The Soviet Union supported the communist North Vietnam, while the US supported South Vietnam. The war lasted for almost 20 years, and over 3 million people died in the war, including 58,000 Americans. Fought in the humid jungles of Vietnam, the casualties of war were not just those who fell to tanks, bombs, and bullets. Many people died of malaria, typhoid fever, and other tropical diseases. A lot of people were mauled by wild animals in the jungle, while some died of snake bites or scorpion stings. This iconic photo shows American soldiers taking a break from the war and just chilling in the jungle. One soldier is sipping a Coke, while another is lighting up a cigarette. Putin in Berlin. The one and only Vladimir Putin has never been a harmless political leader. Long before he became the Russian president, Mr. Putin was a high-ranking spook in the KGB. As a senior officer in the Secret Service, he was probably licensed to kill. We can't be too sure about that. What we are sure about is that he served a tour of duty in Berlin and spent 5 years in Dresden, East Germany. This timeless photo shows a young Vladimir Putin hanging out with other young people in Berlin. He was quite young then, and he looked relatively innocent. Barack Obama plays with his grandfather. Many people know that former American President Barack Obama spent most of his childhood years in Honolulu, Hawaii. His mother and his Kenyan father had parted ways, but this did not seem to affect the happy and adventurous Obama. In any case, the young Barack Obama had the love and attention of his maternal grandparents. In this picture taken at a Honolulu beach, we see the young Obama sitting joyfully on his grandfather's shoulder, and the two frolic on the beach. A closer look at the grandfather shows a slight resemblance in facial structure, even though the old man is white, and Obama is almost coffee brown in the photo. French Jewish people being transported in the 1940s. This photo will remain an eternal blot on the conscience of many French people who lived in the dark days of the Second World War. The picture shows French Jews being transported to concentration camps, where many of them perished. It is simply amazing that France, with its motto of liberty, equality, and fraternity, became an ally of Nazi Germany. But then strange things happen in war. During the dark days of World War II, many people in France collaborated with Adolf Hitler's forces and willingly handed over French Jews to them. In 1945, after the Nazis lost the war, most of these collaborators were arrested, tried, and brought to justice. A manually operated traffic control machine in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1922. Even after you've seen this photo, you might find it hard to believe that America once had a manual traffic control machine. Unless, of course, you have lived in Africa, where a traffic cop uses a gloved hand to manually control traffic. Back in Philadelphia in 1922, it was perfectly normal for a traffic officer to change the traffic signs from stop to go. This was the only way to avoid accidents and road congestion at the time. A man on top of the Golden Gate Bridge during its construction. This picture shows you a man on the top of the Golden Gate Bridge during construction. This project cost a princely $35 million back in the 1930s. The project required a lot of bravery because the risk of fatalities during such projects was quite high. In fact, One unspoken rule at the time was that the construction company should expect one incident for every $1 million spent on the project. This project was completed with a stellar safety record of just 11 incidents. This is thanks to an expert who had the foresight to place a huge safety net under the construction site. This net saved about 19 lives. Annie Edson Taylor and her Niagara Falls journey. This photo will make you wonder about the sanity of the woman involved, but it all went well at the end of the day. Annie Edison Taylor was almost 63 years old when she decided to pull the greatest stunt of her life. Her plan was to ride over the Niagara Falls on her birthday in a watertight barrel. To test run this plan, the smart woman sent a barrel over the Niagara Falls, but she was not in the barrel. Her cat was, and the feline made it safely across. This was all the proof she needed that her plan would work. October 21st, 1901. It happened to be the birthday of Annie Edson Hudson, and it was also the D-Day for this incredible stunt. Assisted by her companions, Annie entered the barrel and secured the lid. Then she began the journey across the Niagara Falls. Annie Edson Taylor arrived safely on the other side of the Niagara Falls, and the rest is history. Women delivering water while men were overseas. The women in this photo are dressed in overalls, and they are carrying out some pretty demanding tasks. They are delivering water and ice blocks to people who need them. In fact, most of the huge ice blocks they were hauling here were delivered to the men at the front lines. It was World War I, and with the menfolk fighting and dying in the trenches, it was time for the womenfolk to try their hands at some duties considered unladylike for the time. Some of these ice blocks were also delivered to the residents of people who needed them and could pay for them. When freezers and refrigerators became more popular, the ice block delivery business died a natural death. Robert Wadlow's height compared to the huge Shaquille O'Neal. In this picture, you're looking at two giants, but one giant clearly dwarfs the other one. Shaquille O'Neal, the former basketball player, is a giant of a man. He stands 7'1" in his stockings and looks even taller when he is all dressed up and wearing a pair of shoes. Understandably, Shaq O'Neal is not used to looking up at people. However, Robert Wadlow was in a class of his own. At 9 feet tall, this man was simply gigantic. Standing next to Robert Wadlow, Shaquille O'Neal looks quite small, and so would Yao Ming and Manute Bol, both former basketball players who are even taller than Shaquille O'Neal. The Monowheel Dinosaur from the 1930s. Try not to laugh when you see this bizarre vehicle and the driver with a bemused look on his face. The great Leonardo da Vinci designed this vehicle a long time ago, but the patent belongs to a British inventor called J.A. Purvis. After taking out a patent in 1930, Dr. J.A. Purvis was so sure he was on to a good thing, he wrote an article on his patent in the Journal of Popular Mechanics. As it turned out, he was wrong. The monowheel ran well, but it had some issues with braking and accelerating. Looks like the monowheel needed some modifications at the design stage, and the great Leonardo da Vinci was too busy with other things to work out the design of the monowheel. Artist Bob Ross feeding a baby raccoon. Artist Bob Ross is pictured here using a feeding bottle to feed a baby raccoon. Well, if you know Bob Ross, then you probably know there is nothing strange about this. Ross was a liberal thinker, and he loved animals. He also loved taking them home and rehabilitating them. Even in his rented apartment, Bob Ross had an alligator in his bathtub and an armadillo in his bedroom. Given his antecedents, it's not surprising that when he finally bought his own home, he converted the whole of his backyard into an animal rescue facility. No doubt, this man walked the talk. Dad and daughter ride penny farthings in the 1930s. It is safe to say that the dad and daughter in this photo were having fun with an outdated toy. This is because in the 1930s, when this photo was taken, penny farthings had been replaced by conventional bicycles. It is also possible the man loved antique bicycles and was a reputable collector. Anyway, the penny farthing was popular in the 1870s and the 1880s. This bicycle takes its name from British coinage. The front wheel is considerably bigger than the rear wheel. This is an allusion to the penny, which is much bigger than the farthing. Cowboys enjoying a saloon in Tuscaloosa, Texas. The cowboys in this picture don't look quite like the ones we see on TV. Their hats are different, their clothes are different, but the joke is on us and not them. The problem most people have is they expect all cowboys to look like Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef. The truth is that the real cowboys are sensible and pragmatic folk. In this picture, these guys don't go for stylish hats. The ones they are wearing provide ventilation and keep their heads cool. Again, they are wearing chaps because this will protect their legs when they go horse riding. Very smart folk, if you ask me. The oldest Harley-Davidson, built in 1903. America's most famous motorcycle business actually began in a Wisconsin shed. At that time, William Harley formed a partnership with Arthur and Walter Davidson, and they started manufacturing motorbikes in their spare time. Around this time, many other motorcycle firms set up shop, but they could not stand the test of time. However, Harley-Davidson bikes continued to sell because of the quality and durability of their products. Visit the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee, and you will see an amazing array of these old bikes. The one in this picture was manufactured in 1903, and it is the first motorbike this company manufactured. Antonio LaCava and his famous Il Biblio Motocaro. Sometimes getting a good book to read can be quite challenging. This is especially true if you live in a big city where life moves at a fast pace. Antonio LaCava has come up with an innovative solution for city dwellers who cannot find the book they want to read. He simply drives through southern Italy and delivers books to youngsters and adults. This creative book supplier makes everything so much fun. First, he plays an instrument to announce his arrival. Then he allows people to look through his books until they find the book they want to read. Antonio LaCava believes reading should be enjoyable, and the teachers should do more to encourage their students to read. Colorized photo of the Grand Duchess, Elizabeth Fiatarovna. Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fiatarovna was a blue-blooded woman from birth to death. Her father was Ludwig IV, Grand Duke of Hesse. Her mother was Princess Alice of the United Kingdom, and her grandmother was Queen Victoria no less. She married Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, son of the Emperor of Russia, and moved to Moscow in 1884. After her husband's death in 1905, she sold all her worldly possessions, set up a convent, and lived like a nun for the rest of her days. In this colorized picture, taken in 1887, the Grand Duchess looked pensive. She probably had a premonition of what life would throw at her in the years to come. She was no longer a part of the Russian royal family when the Bolshevik Revolution swept through the land. Still, Lennon ordered her arrest, and eventually she was executed by the Bolsheviks. 1940s. Princess Elizabeth at the age of 14. Queen Elizabeth II has been on the throne for 70 years, and she is now 96 years old. However, she has not always been a queen. In this rare photo, the current queen was just a 14-year-old teenager. At that time, her father was the king, and she was the heir presumptive. Even at that young age, she knew she had a date with destiny, and she was careful not to put a wrong foot forward. She eventually married Prince Philip of Greece, and they lived together for many years. At age 96 and counting, she is still going strong. God save the Queen. John Lennon with a soda in 1964. This photo is a classic innuendo. In this picture, we see the great John Lennon holding a Coca-Cola bottle and pretending to sniff its contents. Considering that Mr. Lennon was a user from the late 60s until his untimely death in the 80s, this photo spoke louder than words. His pal, Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac, was also known to be a user, and the two men obviously had many things in common. Young Anna Nicole Smith and her aged husband, Jay Howard, an oil tycoon. Anna Nicole Smith was born in 1967. She was an actress, model, and TV personality. In 1991, when she was just 23 years old, she met the tycoon J. Howard Marshall, who was 86 years old at the time. After dating for 2.5 years, the couple got married in Houston, Texas. Many people believed Anna Nicole Smith was a gold digger, but she insisted she married her 88-year-old husband for love and not for money. Anyway, the marriage did not last long because Marshall died in August 1995. He was 90 years old and had been married for just 13 months. Even though Anna Nicole Smith was not named in the man's will, she went to court in an attempt to get some of her former husband's wealth. The court case dragged on for years, and nothing was resolved until Anna died in 2007 at age 39. If indeed she had married Marshall for love, chances are she would be reunited with him in the great beyond. Mata Hari, the Dutch dancer in the 1910s. Her given name was Margaretha Gertruida MacLeod, but most people knew her as Mata Hari, which was her stage name. She was a professional dancer and an extremely beautiful woman with tons of style to boot. Apart from being a dancer, there are indications that Mata Hari was also a spy. She admitted to the French that she worked as a German spy, but there is no evidence to confirm nor disprove her claim. One thing is certain about Mata Hari: she was an outstandingly beautiful woman, and many women have tried to emulate her style.